What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the One More Rep podcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph Percher. This episode is brought to you by NutriBio Supplements, crystals, bikinis for all your trunk needs, and Bio Longevity Labs. BioLab is running a sale that ends tonight. If you are watching this, it is, what is today? The 7th, and the sale ends at midnight. So get on there, use your code JP15. It's a total of 40% off. Unreal. Today I'm joined by my friends, Josh the Moses of Muscle and Austin Brown. And today we are doing overrated or underrated bodybuilding edition. So I'm just going to kick it right off. We got a ton of them. Thank you to everybody that wrote in. A lot of these we've touched on, but I guess it'll be a good spot to have them all organized in one spot for us to give our take. Conventional deadlifts for bodybuilding, overrated or underrated?
Are we in America or Britain?
Overrated, Austin?
I'm going overrated.
Yeah.
Just from a fatigue standpoint, and I know like red flag word there a little bit, but I think most people are putting a little bit more ego in that movement than they need to and taking away from energy they could spend elsewhere as far as actually developing a good back. Are we gonna, when we talk about back development, you were thinking more of like lats, upper back musculature. You're essentially doing like an isometric hold with these muscle groups for this movement, and you're building some really big, dense erectors. If anything, there's application for a deadlift on our posterior, like a posterior day where we're looking to engage hamstrings and glutes more than back development, in my opinion. But in of that same argument, I'm saying, utilize an RDL or, something of that nature, even a rack pull if you're doing it strict and proper, which is rare to see. Rack pull people, you see rack pulls just being bounced off the rack. So, yeah, I mean, as far as like people, it's almost like people are like, my back sucks. This is like a Hail Mary. I have to get really strong at deadlift, and that's how I'm gonna get this big dense back. But the reality of it usually is they just don't understand the mechanics of how to train the back, because it's pretty multifactorial and it's pretty complex because there are so many muscles back there. So I think if these individuals just understood the mechanics of the action of the operation of what the muscles in the back do in their jobs, then they would be able to develop a better back, specifically with like the lat and its job being like arm extension and arm adduction, right? If we think about these two things, we can really engage our back much better. Usually just giving some good cues with that can go a long way. So I definitely think they're overrated. You're usually just kind of digging yourself into a pretty big ditch here without getting a ton of benefit from a hypertrophy standpoint. If they were in a program, and I do program them from time to time, it's going to be later in a workout, when we've already put a lot of stock into these movements that are going to be more beneficial. And I am putting them at the end when fatigue is already high and we don't require a massive load. So risk of injury is lower, and we might get some good erector development out of it or something along those lines. But I would say
risk of ego is also much less at the end as well.
That's right, for sure. They don't feel like putting 5 plates aside on something.
What about you, Josh? You have a big back.
I disagree with a caveat. I think they're underrated in the first like year and a half to 2 years of lifting. And I just say that from the aspect of like lifting heavy shit when you're a newbie is going to turn around and cause you to grow muscle. So I think that there are applications for it. Especially like I said, early in your development, you turn around and it's kind of like a whacking a sledgehammer versus using a needle nose like tweezer. Just obliterate everything back there early on. And also, I have used deadlifts as a form of almost cardio at the end of a workout, where I've done like 3 sets of 15 reps with a minute rest, and it would just built a capacity to work, and work really fucking hard at the end of a workout. So like I found benefit there, but I also haven't conventional deadlifted in like 5 years. So I think they're overrated after a certain point. I think they're underrated in the first like year and a half, 2 years of lifting. I think you just need to turn around and like get used to lifting heavy shit at some point. Having heavy weight in your hands will turn around and make you stop bitching about your grip when you're older.
Mm. I like the point that I have always landed on with this is what you just said, Josh. I think about it at a different point. Side note, I would also like to specifically tell any of my clients that are listening to this, please don't ever do what Josh just said that he was doing at the end of a workout and using deadlifts as cardio. Please don't ever do that.
Yeah, don't do
Um,
that. That was dumb. That was very dumb, but it
I
was
would
cool at
say
the time.
if we're talking about the average person that like starts in the gym and they have kind of like a slow progression where for the first year they're just kind of loosely training and eating, and then eventually they become more interested, and maybe now they're training towards the idea of being competitive and whatever else. Like I would say for the first 5 years they're underrated. If you are someone that exploded right away or started lifting weights at 14 and almost immediately you looked like a competitive bodybuilder, I'm looking at you guys that are 5'6" and below, then disregard that. But, for me, when I started, I was, 5'11" or 6 feet tall and 143 pounds my first day in the gym. Needed for 5 years. Um, I think beyond that, if you are to the point where you've gotten on a bodybuilding stage and looked the part, especially in any men's open class, I think at that point, moving forward, they're probably overrated.
Would you kind of
Um,
say that for like most like multi-joint, like a squat or a bench press, like those kind of all fall
so we got asked, one of the other ones was just barbell movements in general. And I would say if I could do it all over again, I would, from day one, I would never have someone with bodybuilding or physique aspirations do a flat barbell bench because I know what comes with it. It's ego only. It seems like it's the only thing that people intuitively know where failure is because they're just going to push it until it doesn't move. And then they're going to keep trying to push it and then something's going to pop. It happened to me. I just don't, there's just so many other ways to build a chest, and it's not the big, powerful, like durable body part that like your quads, legs, and back are for deadlifts and squats. So barbell movements in general, I think like early on, barbell squats, if they fit you, I could look at someone do 2 reps with 135, and whether you're 1 year in or 10 years in, I could tell you if barbell squats are going to be good for you. Like I could think of people I know, my buddy Gary Turner for a long time tried to force barbell squats because his quads were his weak body part. And when him and I got close and he started to trust my opinion with training, I took one look at him and I said, you should never barbell squat again because you have long femurs and wide hips. This is not going to be good. You need to get your ass on a hack squat. You need to get your ass in a leg press. Um, so
Carlos
I
Thomas
think,
Jr.
huh?
Carlos Thomas Jr. with the barbell squat. He's built for that.
He's built for it. James Hollingshead is built for it. I was built for it. And then even so, and I got great leg development from it. And even so, at a certain point, I just graduated because I was doing, crazy heavy, egos involved and everything else. And it just reached a point where I'm like, the return on this is not worth the risk. Like I could load up a hack squat or a leg press and feel way more safe than walking out with 6 plates on my back to do a set of 8 or a set of 10. Like I can just load this machine and get the same stimulus and probably less fatigue. Again, not to like dive all into that, but your point, Austin, I think was awesome. Like once you are to kind of that intermediate or like competitive level, it is almost like a Hail Mary that people that haven't taken the time or understanding to develop their back, throw at it, because that was me. I can remember the first couple times I competed and it was like, oh, you got good shape, you got good legs, you got to bring up your back. And then like I was hell bent like multiple times post show where I'm just gonna fucking go in and rip shit off the floor. And it will, if I do it all year, my back will get big. And my back never got big.
Right.
And then I learned the difference and started delineating my training between upper back and lats. And now my back might be my best body part or one of my best body parts. So it's like you were talking about all the, it's almost, it sounds silly, but because it is obviously different muscles, but it's almost like training different body parts, because like once you learn how to train your side delts or train your chest, the cueing is always the same, regardless of what movement you use. There's all sorts of different cueing going on that can be, and if you conflate them, it's going to be counterproductive. Like if you're trying to grow your lats and you're rowing your elbow beyond your torso and your scapula is elevating, you missed the mark. So, figuring out in terms of what movements work for you for specifically lats and specifically upper back, and understanding how the mechanics carry over for each of those to each individual movement is going to unlock what you need to unlock for your back.
Yeah. Take the time to learn biomechanics and learn anatomy and learn muscle function. And that's going to be so helpful. Like you could spend an hour looking into that and be like, you might have 10 light bulbs go off on like, oh,
And it doesn't have to be in a textbook or in some boring thing. Go look at guys that have a good back, and go look at guys. Like there are so many examples of guys that you can just go watch. I say this all the time. I'm like, there are 10 guys I could name right now that do a great job with their training and they're constantly posting it. Just go watch them and then go into the gym and emulate them with intensity. And you are going to end up in the right place.
yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Overall,
Yeah. Yeah. Overrated for sure. Okay. One word. It's so no context at all. Proviron, overrated or underrated?
you start, Josh.
With no context, it's real hard. I'm gonna say underrated, just because of the ability to the ability to free up testosterone, to like increase your free testosterone. I would say is probably going to be beneficial, but I feel like this is a really hard one to just kick off without any sort of direction. Um, it's also one of those things that like time of the day kind of plays into it too. If I'm not mistaken, there's some libido aspects to it. If you take it at night, that you can wake up with better libido um, than if you took it in the morning. So I'm gonna say underrated.
I love it.
That's
I'm going to say big time underrated. I think besides everything else that you just listed, if we're talking bodybuilding, it's kind of to what you said. I think it makes everything else work better. It's technically medically classified as non-liver toxic. You either have to be on it for an incredibly long time or use an incredibly high dose for it to even start to scratch the surface of that. And I think there's a lot of benefit to be had in what would be considered a non-toxic range. I think in contest prep, it is one of my favorite things and wildly underrated near the end of a contest prep for a cosmetic look. I think it adds a totally, there's other stuff that goes into that end of the contest prep that are adding to that look, and you should be fat free on top of it. But I think moderate to higher dose of Proviron, anywhere from starting at 4 or 2 weeks out from a show, it will. I have seen it time and time again on myself and other people. It makes a tangible visual difference to someone's already fat-free physique.
Yeah, I think, what are we doing with Proviron? We're increasing DHT.
It's basically pure DHT.
Right. It's supplemental DHT. So where does that prove beneficial? Are there 19 NORs in place, and does that offset of increased DHT prove beneficial with the increase in prolactin? Yes. So that's kind of where it can have the most scientific application, if you do have an issue with that. So I think those cosmetic looks benefits that you're talking about is typically, in that setting where probably there is a trenbolone in place or something like that. So that increase in DHT can help kind of offset that prolactin increase, which is maybe causing a visual
A little
issue.
water issue, or
That kind
I
of
mean, even if you're keeping test high, if you're keeping GH in throughout the end of the show, like
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I would say it's a. I'm kind of in the middle here, on a situational basis and depending on the individual. But like, if you can access quality Proviron, I don't think there's any real downside to utilizing it. It is very expensive.
it is
Um,
expensive.
so that is something I'm always under the consideration as far as prescribing it from a coaching perspective. I
It's an
think
exotic add-on. It's very expensive icing. If you have the money for it, it's worth it, but
cool.
it is very expensive.
Cool. Is it gonna make or break your look to like make you like
No,
this nail the look? No, but like other variables need to be managed properly. So I think it is a great add-in, for most people if it makes sense financially and for that individual's other parts of their stack design and approach.
the only other context that I want to add in where I think it is
Underrated.
underrated, underspoken about for its benefits is for my guys 30 plus that have no competitive aspirations and they're on TRT or they like experimenting on TRT plus. I think 25 milligrams of Proviron a day can do wonder in terms of a non-toxic, really negative way of managing your E2. It'll improve your look, and it's not more injectable oil that you're doing. So
Getting
like
more out of less.
you're getting more out of less. It's a great way to put it. Injectable L-carnitine, overrated or underrated?
We just talked about this.
Off
I was
air.
gonna say, I was gonna say right now, I'm gonna say underrated because I
Okay.
ran that for the last 2 weeks and I pulled off a lot of fat in those last
You
two
did.
weeks.
You
So
did.
I'm gonna say underrated.
And if that was like one of the few or only like new variable, like you were already doing all the other stuff.
I was already doing the cardio. I was already doing the low food. I
Yeah.
added in that, and I added in GW, the numbers of cartering,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and at I want to say
20 milligrams.
10, 10,
Okay.
10. Yeah, I was
I
only
should have
doing
known you
10.
were going low dose.
I, you know, yeah. When I sat there and I was like, "Hey, listen, I'm not trying to turn around and give myself cancer at the back end of a prep." Um, whether I believe that or not, I wanted to do the lowest dose of it because I really didn't. I was scared of affecting my look in a worse way, and I honestly thought I was going to be using it twice a day. So I wanted to do 10 and 10,
Mm,
but I just
mm,
never
mm.
actually brought it with me to use it at the second point in the day. But at I did one, I did 600 milligrams of the
Yeah.
L-carnitine first thing in the morning with
Yeah.
the cartering, and I would say I definitely saw a difference.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
underrated.
I would say like, is the juice worth the squeeze for you? Are you okay with putting another needle in you and putting a
Yeah.
semi-full, substance in your body every single day? Do you have the time to do that in the morning before fasted cardio? Yes, it is a proven substance that's going to increase lipolysis, so and available energy. And so, I mean, it is beneficial. I don't typically use it or prescribe it just because I personally have found that the juice isn't worth the squeeze. I will say that in the last 5 years, the advent of these companies coming out with higher concentration L-carnitine has been very nice. Used to, you could only get it at like 200 mgs a cc max,
You're putting
and
a fucking barrel in you to get this shit? No thanks.
you're ripping 3 cc's a day plus. That's brutal.
Mm.
So like, now that these companies are coming out with the 600, 800, 500 at least per cc, that's pretty nice. And they're smoother too. They seem to have kind of fixed the some of that. So, you know, ultimately, it's like, is that worth it to you? I don't think it's groundbreaking, but
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you would have asked me at literally any other point in the last 15 years, I would have said way overrated. I'm never doing that. I've done it for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And like you said, I have a 600 milligram per ml concentration. So it's just 1 ml. My injectables are highly concentrated and modest dose compared to what I've done in the off season. So my total gear use is only 1 cc a day. So I put bilaterally, I do my L-carnitine and I do my gear. Um, and I would say for the lifestyle that I'm living, trying to pursue my best ever competitive look and, throwing everything at it, um, being on my own schedule, no rush in the morning. I wake up and do my shots and kind of let everything settle before I go do my morning cardio, all these things, no budget limitation, all this stuff. For me, it's been worth the squeeze. I have seen a difference. I also think it's very interesting that there is some backed actual research about the idea that it kind of, I guess, upregulates the androgen receptor. So you're getting more from less in terms of your gear, and no better time than that. I think it's interesting that there's application all year. Like it makes you more insulin sensitive and more likely to partition nutrients better when you're in the off season. So all of these things are interesting to me. I think it just is a total personal decision. I am interested in seeing what it's doing and then understanding more about it. I'll probably continue this along with all my other fat loss protocol things before fasted cardio during my rebound, even as I'm growing and eating in a surplus. And we'll see. I mean, I think it all is working. Like I'm in a spot where I've been doing all the things that are required to look a certain way for a long time. So can I isolate that it's just this one thing has made a monumental difference and I'm going to put it in every plan moving forward? No, I've never put it in a plan, first of all, because I had never personally used it. And that's just how I roll. I don't ever recommend something I've never used. Moving forward, knowing my people and knowing who is on kind of a similar wavelength about bodybuilding and is obsessed and committed and all these things as I am, I may say, hey, you might like this. This might be worth the squeeze. I don't think I'm ever going to be at a point where I'm going to say, hey, starting tomorrow at 600 milligrams of L-carnitine, you must do this.
yeah,
Um,
I think
so
I
I
think
don't, I don't really have an opinion. Actually, I'm in the properly rated, I guess, individually rated.
It
yeah,
depends, I guess, who's rating it.
Right.
I
Context
agree.
dependently rated.
I
Yeah,
think for someone who's kind of like dipping their toes in the water of like performance enhancements, like it's one of the best first exposures. Um,
That's another thing. I think guys could probably get more out of their TRT. Like if someone's firm on being on TRT, their health is a major concern. They have a family, they run businesses, but it's summer and they're a little, they're getting a little spicy about adding this or adding a little something to get an edge. I think this is like a non-androgenic way of getting a little bit more from it.
yeah, 100%. And females as well is one of the
Females
best.
too.
It's one
I've
of the
also
most.
read that it improves fertility in both genders, which is interesting. So if
Yeah,
you're someone that's like, on TRT, or maybe you had to come off TRT and you're on an HCG, HMG fertility protocol, my understanding of this is that this may improve your odds of being fertile.
that is the one time I will program it is if
Mm,
that's someone's objective or a female
mm,
to regain mints, um,
mm.
because it does increase that LH signaling.
Interesting.
Yep. So
Yeah,
that
there's still so much to learn, man. Anytime I feel like I talk about something, I'm like, it makes me realize how little I know.
But that's the thing is we know so much, but we still don't know so much, which is,
Yeah, yeah,
that is just how this, and that gives people, so many people have, FOMO of like all of these things going on. And that is because of social media and how
yeah,
available information is today. But it's like understanding all of these synergies and how all of these things can work to lead to this similar destination, and just knowing that at the end of the day all of these questions we're going to answer are just tools to
yeah,
help us get there, and we can get there irregardless without all of these things. It's just they're just parts of the toolbox, but I think we pretty much covered that as far as like what it can be good for. I mean, those were
yeah,
all.
yeah, for sure. Mitochondrial uncouplers, overrated or underrated? So I guess these are DNP, the newly hyped and discussed BAM 15 fall into these. Tren is actually has some uncoupling properties, which I recently just learned about and discovered, which I think makes a lot of sense for the body temperature increase and the way that we sweat if you're utilizing enough. Um, but I guess really the two main ones that come to mind are DNP and BAM 15.
I'm too ignorant to the subject to really speak on that, to be honest.
Me too. Good answer. I just, from what I know, I did 3 days of BAM 15. And I was still at a point where I was in contest prep, but I was still at a point I was like 14 weeks out or something. And by all other accounts, it felt like I was in the off season. I was still eating a lot of food. Output was minimal. I was training like an ox. I was excited to go to the gym. I felt like I was full force more than ever. And then I started this, and by day 3, I could not physically get my ass up off the couch as though I was 10 days out. And I was pouring, pouring sweat, almost to the point that I could see steam coming off of my face. Um,
Wow.
that was from BAM 15. I've never done DNP. I will never do DNP. I will never. I will do everything in my power to steer people away from using DNP. I think something like that, where one miscalculation, either by you or the person that made it in their bathtub, ends your life, under no circumstance is that worth it ever. Because you take it, it takes one misstep, like I said, either by you or the person that made it and sold it to you, and you're done. It doesn't matter if you go live in the ER and you have the best medical attention on planet Earth. There is nothing they can do for you. Your insides are going to cook and you are going to die. So that's maybe the only neverless thing that I'll ever be firm about.
Yeah, I completely agree. What did your body weight do in those 3 days?
I was still eating a lot of food, and 2 out of the 3 days were rest days. So it wasn't enormous, but I came down. I came down probably 2 pounds in 3 days.
Okay. Just curious. I didn't know if it like fell off the table because you felt so bad and things like
No,
that.
no, it didn't fall off the table. So that's why at first, like I was just like, yeah, maybe I'll leave this. And then by day 3, when it was like time to go, I think it was like time to go train legs. And I just was like, oh my God, I feel like I got hit by a bus. I'm like, this needs to get out. And within a day, I was just back to normal. All
That's
right.
good.
I feel like people wrote shit in knowing that some of the passionate opinions that we've had about different things in the past, and they just want to hear us rant, or they just want to get me excited. I don't know. Um, this guy writes in and says low dose GH 2 to 4 IUs.
You just went.
Underrated. Under fucking rated.
Josh, this will be your last time on the podcast.
Well, it's funny
Uh,
because our shirt design discussion today is right
Yes.
much in for this. So
Yes. I want to come up with some mocks before I put that out in the air.
yeah, no, for sure. If you're gonna do it, I would get your investment worth. If you're looking for an add-in to your TRT and you're a 30-year-old, 35-year-old, and you're looking good, you're going on beach vacation, 4 IUs, cool. Rock it out with your 25 mgs of Proviron and your 4 IUs of GH. You didn't alter your health. You didn't cause your health to become downregulated in any capacity.
And
You're
you'll
gonna look
look better on the beach. You're gonna look sick.
you're gonna look better. You're gonna feel better. You're gonna
Yeah.
gain a little training performance. You're gonna sleep a little better. Cool. If your goal is to be a professional bodybuilder, you should use more. Now, I will say,
Fair.
um, introductory dosage, I will start around there just to
Yeah.
gain
Yeah.
a response, some response data, because a lot of the time when I do see that people have a negative response to GH, and when I say a negative response, I'm just talking, high, like a very acute carpal tunnel or things of this nature,
Blood sugar.
blood sugar, water retention, carpal tunnel. It is going to be during that first few months of initial exposure. And I typically will start someone at 3 IUs, four
Yeah.
IUs, and then go from there. So if you're just first starting, I probably wouldn't send it with 10 IUs.
Yeah.
Start gain some data on response and then titrate it up appropriately. But if you were looking to get IGF levels in a super physiological range, you should be looking to do a little more than that for sure.
Even worse than all the things that you mentioned, there are people that are non-responders to growth hormone.
Sure, there's that.
I have
Bro.
this to say, which I know Joe's not going to want me to speak on this topic whatsoever. So, um, I personally saw a bit of a difference when I first started growth. Running it at night at 3 IUs, I saw a benefit to my sleep. So I had never run it before, which kind of plays into what Austin was saying. I did get a response. My sleep got better, but I did run 5 units the last 2 weeks of the contest prep. And again, got significantly leaner. So therefore,
Best you ever
I am
looked too.
leaning,
Full lean.
I am 100% leaning more towards underrated or
Way
one more time.
overrated.
One more time. The low dose is overrated. Sorry.
Yeah.
Low dose is overrated. I misspoke. Sorry about that.
I'm part of the 8 IU crew at minimum. So
Do more.
um yeah, I think all that is said. Like, I think to be honest with you, man, like I hear the idea of getting an initial response. I'm totally cool with that, especially if someone is willing and able to be on more and for the long run without breaks. Like, this person just stocked up and they got a year's worth. And you know what? Let's run 6 or 8 weeks at 4 IUs to get an idea of how you're going to respond. Great. Love it. You want bodybuilding results, it's going to take more. I think it's silly when I hear that people are like, yeah, so I'm in just made my first investment in growth hormone. I bought enough to run 4 IUs a day for 3 months. It's like, great, you just wasted your money.
Yeah, it sucks.
What are you gonna do with that?
Yep.
So you're gonna get little to no benefit other than maybe you get some better sleep for 3 months, and then you're just gonna stop and discontinue it. So no continued benefit. Good for you. It's not
I'm
like
gonna
geared. Like it's a snowball effect if you understand what it's doing. So
Yeah.
it's you, man. I from the time that I started, I've never come off. Like from the time that I finally understood what it was and where the line was for bodybuilding, and like, I started in a bullshit manner, the way that I just described in like 2019. And, I do 3 months here, then I can't afford it. Then 4 months without it, 3 months here at 3 IUs. John Jewett keeps me on 3 IUs, whatever. And then 2022, I was like, you know what? I'm ramping this shit up. And I started at 6, and I've been on at least that continuously. And it's been the best stretch of progress that I've ever made by far. It brought me to an entirely different level. That year before that, I competed at 192 pounds. This morning, I am fucking sliced, and I was 227. So
There's that.
I'm gonna follow this up with a uh overrated versus underrated on this one. Large bolus doses or throughout the day. So
I think it depends on what the goal is. I think if you're growing, it should be a bolus before bed. And I think if you're in a fat loss phase, I think you're going to get more lipolytic effect, and we're not growing new tissue. So I would space it out as often as possible. Like if you're someone like Austin and I, where you just are home all day, and whether it's because you work from home on a corporate job, or you're in fitness and get to make your own schedule in any capacity, or whatever the case is, I would try to do as many 2 IU shots in a day as possible.
I like that.
So if you're doing 6, it's 3 shots a day. If you're doing 8, it's 4 shots a day. If you're doing 10 or more, I would probably still cap it at 4, just because that's a little OD. And then it's like, timing wise, you're overlapping them to the point that it's like almost counterproductive. Like you'd like to see 3 or 4 hours in between shots. Um, but
Preach.
yeah, I think the only time really you'd want to see in a growing capacity a dose split would be if like the pre-bed bolus is causing such excruciating carpal tunnel that you can't sleep. Then it might be put half first thing in the morning. I don't love that, but it's furthest away from sleep. My move, if I needed to do that, would be to put a portion, maybe half, pre-training, especially if you can train earlier in the day. Like I typically in the off season just train after meal 1. So I would do, pre-workout with half, and then I would do the other half before bed. But if you don't have that issue with carpal tunnel, or you manage it some other way, like I've talked about, from the last podcast, somebody suggested using a mild diuretic for that, and I'm probably going to do that. I think it's you let it all rip before bed.
Yeah.
Overrated or underrated? SLU PP332.
underrated,
Agreed.
under fucking rated.
It seems pretty
That
hyped up. So like people like so
It
like
is. I
fine,
almost.
it's worth it as fuck. How about that?
It is worth it as fuck. Yeah. You know what? As I was saying it, I'm like, man, it's so crazy hyped. It's good if someone's willing to say that it's still underrated.
I'm
But I
willing to say
don't.
that it's
Go ahead,
go
Josh.
ahead.
No, go
Sorry.
ahead. No, go.
I'm willing to say that it's underrated simply for the fact of I thoroughly believe that most people are probably going to have their mitochondria not as efficient as possible. So
100%.
if you could just tweak that even a little bit, if you're running what's the lowest dose I've seen? 100 micrograms, I believe. Let's say you're running 100 micrograms a couple times a day. I think that just that little uptick is going to turn around and make you better. Whether you are a lifestyle or um a bodybuilder, I think just having a little bit of mitochondrial efficiency be that much better is going to make a huge difference.
It's going to make your life better. And I think it's
So
it's better in every the idea. I'm salivating over the idea of using it in an off season to grow, because I've only used it in a fat loss phase so far. Um, I think, you know what, I'm gonna do like a postseason full recap on my experience with peptides, because this is the first time I've dove into a lot of this stuff. L-carnitine, cardarine, SLU, MOTS-C, all this stuff. If I had to say that one of them though was the biggest game changer, and it was because I started with this on its own, the SLU has completely changed the reality that I knew contest prep to be. I cannot put into words how different this contest prep was for me in terms of the amount of return and benefit that I got from my efforts compared to every other year that I've competed since 2014. It's completely different. I've never been more efficient or gotten more return from less work.
Yep.
So even with all the crazy hype, even with the price, knowing that it is expensive if you're getting it from a legitimate source, I would still say underrated because I don't think the half of the industry has even scratched the surface of understanding it. I still see every day on Instagram people leaving comments, posting stories that they think it's snake oil, or that they're like emotionally rejecting this idea that it's as beneficial as people say.
I've had scenarios where I've seen it completely turn around metabolic resistance.
Yep.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Eventually people are going to catch on. I mean, from a coaching perspective, I am grateful that I took this opportunity to experiment on myself and saw such a wild difference, because I feel like it is going to be another reason that sets apart my coaching ability and my toolbox from people that are like firm in their rejection of new ideas. So, yeah, underrated for me. Um, Overemphasizing the stretch during training, overrated or underrated?
I'm going to say underrated. And
Okay.
I'm going to say underrated because of things like dog crap training.
Mm.
Or
Kicking it old school.
I believe Scott Stevenson uses it in fortitude training as well.
Yeah, well, Scott has
Just
said outright he got a lot of inspiration from DC.
I think at minimum, when you do a weighted stretch in an extended position at the end of a set, you will build a mind muscle connection that you could not get otherwise. And if you can connect with the muscle tissue better, you can drive more stimulus to it through the intention of using it. I know that sensation is considered as overrated, but I do firmly believe if you cannot fucking feel your chest in a goddamn chest press, you aren't using your chest. If
Like,
you
how
walk
can you
off a
expect
chest,
it to grow if you can't feel it?
like I'll tell you this, in the first couple sets today of my chest training on my first day back, I didn't feel my chest whatsoever. So I walked over to a pec fly and I did 50 reps until I had a pump. And then I went back to the chest press. Was I as strong? No, but I definitely got more of a workout out of it. My chest definitely is now feeling it. And I think that's just firmly from the fact of you turn around, you put more intention into the muscle, you will grow more. So therefore, if you are causing trauma through an extended stretch, or allowing more blood to come to the area just because it's fatigued and now having to hold a weight, yes, you are going to turn around and significantly increase the stimulus. Sorry, this is a hot one for me.
I just think training in a full range of motion should be required for all body parts. I will say that the one body part that I don't like to see a quote unquote over exaggerated stretch on is a lat movement. Let me explain.
That's mechanically sound, though, to say that. Like, we know that.
Right. So you will see someone on a cable row and they will put their head between their legs to stretch their lat.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's like at the end of the day, that shoulder joint does not need to move that
yeah,
far to
yeah.
have lats fully stretched. This is my lat fully stretched. This is not doing
That's your
anything.
Terry's now. Yeah,
Now the first 6 inches of this movement are getting my shoulder joint back into position to then use my lat, which is
yes.
going to my upper back musculature, which is then therefore going to take away from my set. So that is the one body part on. I will continually in training analysis say, hey, like we don't need to over exaggerate the stretch here. But train in a full range of motion. So yes, if I would change the over under input here to training in a full range of motion. Training in full range of motion is extremely underrated. Train with full ranges of motion always.
So I have I don't totally agree with you in terms of just the semantics of what you're saying and how people are going to hear it,
Right.
because there are a lot of movements that I am not doing a full range of motion. I'm doing a full stretch, but I'm not unnecessarily in my, or what I would consider unnecessarily locking out. I can think of anything like a chest press. I can think of anything for legs. I'm going as deep as I possibly can. I'm driving up hard and I'm coming 5/6 of the way up and then immediately descending again. I am not locking out my knees and standing up at the top of a squat. I am not locking out my elbows and resting at the top of a chest press. So those are the things, like, that's my caveat to that. I think that the person that wrote this in, I had a little conversation with him. It's like I don't want to say older guy. It's not a guy in his 60s, but it's not a, broccoli headed kid. Um, and he was writing in, I guess, hoping that we were going to say that this is overrated. And I think that the flaw in that comes from who he sees presenting this as valuable information. To me, when I started training or watching people that were training, I watched Jay Cutler put 4 plates on an incline barbell and go all the way to his collarbone and then go 3/4 of the way up and then immediately back down again. And I watched these guys do stuff like this, and I just went into the gym and emulated it. And wouldn't you know it, it felt right. That is how I felt like things were going to connect and grow. So bodybuilders have been doing this for a long time. Watch pumping iron. Arnold does flat dumbbell flies where it looks like his elbows are going to scrape the floor at the bottom. And then he comes 3/4 of the way up and then back down again. So this is nothing new. It took science and evidence-based influencers 60 years to catch up with what bodybuilders have always been doing. So to me, I almost think it's drifted to this point where people are so burnt out on all the evidence-based skinny dorks that are trying to pass as experts giving this information. This is one example where I actually agree. I think in real life, we've seen over and over again that this is applicable in most examples. And especially like, I would do that on a couple of these movements that I talked about, but I wasn't always I was never like, for most of my bodybuilding, I wasn't super mindful of setting up strength curves and all these different things. And I would say over the past 5 years, I've become very aware of it and go out of my way when possible to set it up so that most of my movements are like loaded, stretched. And again, I've taken more drugs, I've eaten more food, but this is the period where I've exploded with progress the most. So I think, I don't know. I hate to be that guy again. I think probably accurately rated, because there's plenty of people that could say that it's overrated because they're sick of hearing this information from who's saying it. But I think for the most part, I think you are only going to see a lot of benefit if a good chunk of your volume is movements that, one, you're getting into a full stretch, and two, if possible, the strength curve actually matches it and it's loaded in the stretch.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the point you brought up of maybe not always fully coming into the 100% of the concentric. But the stretch, I do absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
As much as possible.
I've described it as, I've described it, especially like with legs, because everyone wants to do one set and then rest up at the top. I've described it as trying to stay in the fire.
Yeah. Good way to put it. Stay in the tension zone, right?
And you know what? You know where I got that from? Because I've been doing that. That is from day one. That's the only way that I've ever done my squats and my leg presses. I got that from a Rich Piana video. I watched him do a set of like 50 something with 225 on his back for a barbell squat. And it was consecutive piston reps for like a set of 50 where he did not stand up until he barely made it up to rack the bar. And he was just the biggest motherfucker on YouTube doing it. The biggest motherfucker I had ever seen, being from small town fucking bumblefuck New Jersey. And I'm like, fuck it. I want big legs. Everyone says that I need to have big legs because I'm a tall guy. I'm going to do it like this and see what the fuck is up. And here we are 15 years later. It hasn't done me wrong.
Yeah.
So,
I love
all
that.
right. All right, we could do these all day. I may even save some of these and come back, or I'll put up another one and give people a chance, because I like this. I like going back and forth about this. It gives people a chance to hear some different perspectives.
Yeah, I got a handful of good ones too. I think we could run a couple eps of this for sure.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's call it here because I'm gonna go eat. But
Same.
yeah,
Same.
let us know what you guys think. If there's a topic that you want us to discuss, underrated or overrated. And yeah, that's all for now. For Austin Brown, for Josh the Moses of Muscle Jefferson, I'm Joseph Percher. This was the One More Rep podcast. And until next time, guys, we are out.